welcome guys. My name is Spencer. I'm also go by Smack604 on Twitter. So I'm the founder of Honest Ones, which is a project about self-expression and really trying to empower the community to create, learn, and grow. So we're kicking off what we're calling Honest Sessions, where we're speaking to kind of interesting people in Web3. And today's topic is about Web3 development. And if you're a Web2 developer, how you might be able to kind of get into the space. And so today I'm joined by Krishan, who I met at a NFT UK event recently. And I just thought he'd be a really great person to kick the series off with. So Krishan, maybe tell folks a bit about your own background.
Yeah, hi, thank you for having me. So my background is very much development in Web2. I've been coding for quite a while now. So since I graduated, I was in like startups, mostly at the very early stage, usually like the founder or one of the earliest members of the team, or consulting with the early team or some sort. And then for the last, well, not last now, but between 2015 and 2020, I started a startup with two finance guys. So it was a fintech, building AI products for hedge funds, which sounds very cool, but day to day, it's the same as any other startup. Always on the tech side, so building the product and then building a team that's building the product and then building many products and so on. And then we eventually sold that. And so since 2020, I've been in Web3, mostly in NFTs. The DeFi wave never really hit me because all the financial instruments I saw whilst I was in fintech kind of turned me off to the whole making money kind of thing. I was always more interested in building something. And so when I saw NFTs, like the communities that were coming up is the part that interests me the most, right? There's now like people coming together for some joint cause, and yeah, there's a lot of speculation, but I think that's what really enticed me. And now I'm just building lots of products for NFT communities and around people around that space.
And so when you kind of got into NFTs, was it like, did you start off more like as a collector, or were you immediately kind of drawn to the like looking at the tech side of it?
Yeah, no, not a collector at all. I missed lots of good things that I should have bought along the way. It was very much the data. So whilst the previous company that was the AI for hedge funds thing, we were basically collecting huge amounts of data, analyzing them, and then giving the insights to hedge funds so that they can make trades, marginally faster than someone else. Sometimes minutes, sometimes hours or days. And for NFTs, crypto in general, the big thing that I saw was all this data is on chain, but there's still a lot of it's not trivial to go and get it, or it's trivial to go and get it. It's not trivial to like ask interesting questions. And so the first thing I did was build out which I still have, like it's still running every day. It's like a big database that's constantly scraping all the retrieving all the NFT trades ever made on all the platforms, and it's in a big SQL database, like with lots of indexing. So now I can like very, very quickly build up like, I don't know, interesting charts of, if you've held a BASI, how long have you held a punk, or like, how many BASI holders own some other random collection, or, way more interesting stuff. I can't think of the interesting stuff on the fly, but it's all there for me to build stuff on top of. And so really it was the data. And only later did I start actually buying NFTs. That was more like July of 2021.
Gotcha. So you've got this database, so you've got your own kind of like Nansen or Dune analytics of sorts.
Exactly, yeah, just for NFTs, but yeah, exactly. And it's getting very big now, but after when I started, it was growing a tiny bit every day, and then over last summer, the NFT summer, it was it's growing by like tens of gigabytes or sometimes hundreds of gigabytes a day, which is it's getting quite expensive to maintain. But there's lots of products that I've built on top of it now, so it's incredibly useful.
Gotcha. And then so that was kind of like, so you're exploring Web3 through that way, or seeing what's going on with NFTs. Then what was the next step for you to kind of get further involved? I don't know if it was like looking at Solidity and smart contracts, or what path did you take there? Yeah,
so maybe if I step back a little bit, like the reason I got into Web3 was my co-founder now, Arthur, and a few other friends. So I have a friend called Yele who worked at Binance in Africa, and Philip who works on MEV bots. Like these are all smart people around me that was from my Web2 days, where I built like small products with them, and all three of them were constantly like telling me to get into Web3 since like 2014 or maybe 2013, and I didn't listen because I was busy. And so when I got into Web3 2020, I just started building stuff, and then for myself. I was still doing some consulting things in Web2. So I started building some stuff on my own just for interest. And then slowly like projects started coming that were like, we want to build something. Can you help us? And so we got involved with a couple of one on Solana, one on Ethereum. It's called Cryptochronics and Spriteclub respectively. And then the founder of Creepz reached out at some point. I think we met in NFC UK, the Discord channel when it first went up. So I got involved with them and a few other smaller projects along the way. Obviously Creepz is massive now, so the other two are still small compared to that one. And then we started building, our own project called $1 Million Token Page. Actually, that started the first. I'm forgetting the timelines here. We started building our own project, which was my excuse to learn Solidity, actually put something on the blockchain, like actually engage with people and try and build our own community. That didn't go particularly well, just because we're both, me and my co-founder are both engineers. We're not community building is not really our thing. Like participating and building tools for them is easy. Building them is very hard. And so when we started building that project, and then along the way we got approached by a bunch of other projects. That was these guys, Spriteclub, Creepz, Cryptochronics, and a few other smaller ones. We built out some stuff for them. And then that actually brings us to now, where a couple of months ago we started Token Page, which is our kind of company for building lots of projects rather than just one project for ourselves, like building lots of projects for ourselves and doing consulting work for NFT projects.
Gotcha. And so say on ETH then, so Spriteclub was the first, like, did you do their smart contract, or what was your guys' involvement with that project?
Yeah, so for Spriteclub, we did everything on the technical side. So we helped them set up Discord. We did the mint came last. Like actually the team was incredible. They spent so long building up a community and getting people really hyped for the mint. And actually the mint was the first ever mint of its kind. So the contract was interesting, but it's still not like, difficult. Like I've done way more complicated stuff in Web2 compared to that. So the contract was difficult, but not, the contract was interesting, very interesting, but not difficult. The minting flow, so like the website and stuff, is still the brunt of the work. Most of the work that goes into most of these projects is front end. The contracts are generally very small. The back end is generally very small because that's offset by the blockchain. And so front end is still pretty much like, most of the work. And I think in Web3, design and usability is not everywhere, but in most projects, it's actually higher quality than what I see in early stage Web2 companies. And so front end becomes, the majority of the work.
Gotcha. And like say, like just learning those skills, like setting up a Discord, like, obviously, I don't know about at that time, but like there's been so many Discord hacks and scams that have happened when people have hacked Discords. Is that like something that you researched a lot into, like Discord security at that time and setting that up?
Yeah, we researched a bit. I mean, I think in general, so even in Web2, so I've been doing like CTO role for a long time, and so security often fell under my belt. And I guess I have an opinion that is fairly standard, I think, amongst people, but very, you either fall on one side or the other, and that is just that like security is mostly common sense. Like, no, not mostly. Security is pretty much all common sense, right? And like it's when you leave that common sense aside to either move faster or out of laziness or out of you can't agree on something, like that's where the security alls happen. And so when we were setting up these Discords, it's fairly straightforward to not to not fall into these traps. Install minimal plugins. If you hear about, you have to keep an eye on if a plugin has been if a bot has been compromised in some way, get rid of it quickly. But the team had taken control over it by that point. Like when we were first installing it, was very straightforward and very, very clean to do.
Gotcha. And so with Spriteclub, you're taking care of, you took care of the Discord, you're building their website, I'm assuming, and then also I guess the associated mint page and stuff with that.
Yeah, so the mint page was the majority of the work. The Discord was very straightforward, and they took over it very quickly. The team themselves, because once they were building the community, it was kind of easy for them to add bots in and add engage as they wanted. And so one of the team members was incredibly good at I think they started calling him the Sprite bots. Whilst there was no official bots, like he was named the Sprite bot within the team. And yeah, so the team took over that very quickly. So the majority of the work was the website. Oh, and the generation of the sprites. I think nowadays that's fairly commodity tooling as well.
Okay. Oh, so you created the actual tooling to do the generation of the artwork as well.
Yeah, so the artist who's incredibly talented drew out like all of the individual traits, and our tool kind of helped them put it together and then preview it and then rerun it, or add some rules like, this hair can't go with this earring or whatever, and then run it again and so on.
Okay, cool. And then so when it comes to like say for Web2 developers wanting to kind of learn Web3, like all that like website, that image generation, scripting and stuff like that is not Web3 per se. The Solidity contract is. As far as learning Solidity, were you like using online resources or like, how did you pick that up? Is it similar to a lot of other languages that you're already familiar with?
Yeah, so Solidity was the hardest thing. So I can go back a little bit. So when in April of 2021, we started building our own project, $1 Million Token Page. And then I started with Creepz, I think in like September. And Spriteclub, it minted in like April of this year, and Chronix minted like early this year. So the majority of my time was actually on $1 Million Token Page. And so we built a lot of functionality there, and the smart contract was quite interesting. It wasn't like the standard ERC 721 everyone uses. We built our own version. And language-wise, it was very straightforward. I used a thing called crypto zombies, which I think pretty much everyone uses. It's like a what was that cat's thing? Is it Crypto Kitties? Great. It became big when Crypto Kitties was around, and it kind of just teaches you how to build an NFT project. And you're making like little zombie characters. And that was really good. But that's kind of syntax and language are pretty much straightforward for most developers to pick up. Like I think any developer generally, it's kind of easy to pick up a language. What's hard to pick up is like how to work in that language and how to think. And the really challenging part with it's not Solidity so much, it's like blockchain projects, is thinking in terms of money. And so, everywhere you are, there's two things. One, you can't update it. Like updatable contracts exist, but we can go to that a bit later, but they're, questionable. I would hesitate before I interact with an upgradable contract. And the second thing is you are dealing with money at all times, right? And so there's certain ways you have to think that is slightly different, that you kind of, it's not normal, but I liken it kind of like when back in the day people were making the first rocket that went to the moon or whatever, and they say that they only had like 10 kilobytes of RAM or whatever that stat is. We don't have to worry about that in today's modern development. We don't think about that at all. But this kind of takes you a little bit back towards that point where, you have to worry about gas. You have to worry about like security in a way, which is you can't let people like re-entrancy and stuff like that. These are not things that generally in Web2 we have to worry about so much, because the tooling around it is so, it's so easy to just use a framework that does everything. Whereas in Solidity, there are no frameworks, right? Because if you added a framework, your gas costs are going to go through the roof, or like, your control of the finer details that you really need in order to keep gas down is not allowed. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you can't do yet. I'm sure this will change over time, but the fact that we don't have higher level tooling means that the way we think when we write it is very different. So yeah, and when we wrote $1 Million Token Page, I realized, me and my co-founder realized in December that there was a huge bug in it. Like one of the, luckily no one had found it yet, but one of the functions we had just forgotten. We had forgotten like 10 characters. You have to write a modifier at the end that says only the owner can call this function, and we just forgot to add that. And so it's a huge mistake. And so we had to redeploy the contract and do this whole migration thing, which was quite interesting to do. But it just showed how back just within like 6 months. There was so much, and now like I was testing contracts and everything, so there's no chance that ever happens. But within 6 months, like there was so much change in my learning, and really the only way to have found that was deploy something, and then go through that terrible situation of, oh my god, it's broken. But luckily, it's the only thing that's ever gone badly so far.
So that contract, you guys said Mint is live, and then you guys found the bug and said, okay, we got to pause Mint and redeploy.
Exactly. Well, I didn't have a pause function. I didn't, because we wrote the ERC 721 ourselves. Like I wrote it myself. It was an exercise to write it myself, right? So we used Open Zeppelin's default, but we needed some functionality that isn't there in all 721s, and we wanted to make it a bit more interesting. So we kind of rewrote a bunch of parts, and so there was no pause function. So we couldn't even pause it. So technically, someone could still go and mint all the remaining tokens of the old bad contract. It's just that now the front end doesn't. We migrated everyone that owned a token before a point to the new one, and the front end doesn't listen to the old contract anymore. So technically it's possible, but yeah.
And like things like so I think it was Azuki that kind of did some kind of innovated on the smart contract, made it more efficient. I think when buying like multiple tokens, I think the 721A, I think it was called. But is that sort of stuff like, you know, especially with gas, which was a big deal, say last year when the network was really busy all the time, is that stuff that is testable to be able to know how gas efficient your contract is? Is that
definitely. So I use hard hat. I think there's a bunch of ways to use it, but pretty much everyone uses hard hat. Everyone I know uses hard hat these days. And hard hat is a thing that it creates a local Ethereum, not a node, but a EVM chain running on your machine. Like it's empty, so you can, and it's a test thing, so you can edit it however you want. So it runs that, and then you can write a bunch of tests that actually run against that network. So it'll deploy your contract, you write a bunch of tests, and it runs against it. And part of that, there's an extension. I don't think it's built in yet, but I think it should be. There's an extension that you can get, which reports. It's called the gas reporter. It'll report the gas based on your tests that you've written. It will report how much gas each test used, and so that's a good estimate of, not estimate, an exact estimate of an exact calculation of how much it's going to cost when you actually mint. The challenge is obviously the gas price at the time. You don't know it, so you know when I was doing this in April of last year or July of last year, I was setting the gas to 100, so I could see the rough, you know, how much dollars is actually going to cost. And obviously ETH was much higher, so you have to enter those things kind of manually because they're not systematically calculatable. But you know, if you use a rough estimate, it's kind of useful. It's very useful to know, like, you know, if you tweak something and it goes down, or you tweak something and it goes up, like that's for sure, regardless of gas price or the ETH price. You know how many way it's used.
Gotcha. And then you mentioned, so you've been on Creepz, which is obviously one of the it's kind of survived the bear market, still above 1 ETH for the Genesis Creepz. So you guys met one of their founder, or one of their team.
Joe.
Just in Discord, actually, you're saying.
Yeah, totally. I mean, I wasn't really looking for anything. I was just introducing myself in the NFT UK thing, and then I think maybe even the same day or maybe the next day, Joe messaged and said like, "Hey, we're building out Creepz. We're looking for some like more senior kind of development. Would you want to come on?" And I was actually like working at the time, doing consulting at the time. But I was very keen to work on anything that I could, because it's just such an interesting space. Because I had no idea, and obviously Creepz being Creepz, like I really had no idea what I was signing up for. But I had no idea what the interesting things that were going out. Like, I'm very against speculation in general. I'm not a big, which is why I didn't buy an NFT until so late. I'm generally very anti-speculative. I don't. Not only do I not like doing it, I don't really like it happening. I know it has to happen. Like market dynamics need to work. Like I went through the whole fintech thing, and so I kind of like appreciate it. But like, you know, when it's the major driving force, it's not. It kind of I stopped being interested very quickly. And so when Creepz, when Joe reached out, it was super interesting because like most of the NFT projects were promising interesting stuff, but they weren't really doing it. And like, you know, for Creepz, the interesting thing was they had a roadmap. Like they had like, you know, I think like, so I probably talked to Joe on, maybe let's just say it was a Monday. I don't think it was a Monday, but let's say it was a Monday. And then by Wednesday we were in a call and we had like, they like shared all these Google Docs of like, here's our master plan. And I read through them, and it's just like, nobody's doing this. I mean, even now, like I strongly believe Creepz has done some of the most interesting stuff. You know, Bases have done some interesting stuff, and you know, Moonbirds have done some interesting stuff, but I still think Creepz have done more. Like we built out so much stuff, and they're continuing to build. I'm not really working with them anymore, but they're still building such incredible stuff. And so that was very apparent in, I don't know when we spoke, either September or October. And so I signed up like as soon as I could. That was seeing someone actually building something. That was incredible for me.
And so your role with Creepz at that point, was it the front end website? Was it smart contract or minting and smart contract? What was it for you?
Yeah, so they had the initial version of the Genesis Creepz smart contract pretty much ready. They had their invasion pass had already been deployed, and they had an amazing front end engineer, Victor, who also did smart contracts. And so my role was mostly at the time like looking through the smart contracts and trying to think through the next stages of things, like how could we design them, how could we architect them in such a way that this whole Creepz universe could work together. Like this was before Lumi, so but Lumi had been kind of planned. So how do we like get Lumi and all of these like mini games and stuff into the same kind of universe so we can architect it in a nice way with Victor, who's an incredible engineer. So I never really touched front end. I only ever touched smart contracts, and then eventually for season 2, we moved a lot of the stuff to no. Even for season 1, we had some backend stuff, like some server stuff, but then for season 2, it was very much backend. And then we moved to DigitalOcean at some point, rather than running on some other servers, so helping out with that kind of stuff, like infrastructure, backend, and smart contracts and smart contract testing. Smart contract testing was my main thing, like running tests for everything that was happening to make sure that there was no chances of something weird. Especially like when you have so many contracts working together, it was it's difficult to make sure that there's nothing slipping through the gaps.
And like you kind of alluded to a point which was about kind of uneditable smart contracts, right? And so when Creepz first minted, like how much of season 2 and like because they do like I think like you can upgrade your creep with different traits and stuff as the seasons kind of went on, like how much of that had to be baked into the first contract, or how much could just be is it a separate contract, or how does that side of things work?
Yeah, it's super interesting because composability is such a big part of Web3. Like you want to be able to, these contracts can talk to each other fairly simply and work with each other. But of course, as you say, like you need to know some things before you can make that. Like if the API isn't there, you're not going to be able to talk to that, use that function or use that contract in the way you want to. There wasn't, this was part of that plan that I was doing at the start, right? Which is like we didn't know much about season 2, or maybe Joe and Dom did, but it definitely wasn't firmed down, so it wasn't something we could be like developing against. But at least most of season 1 had been planned out fairly, incredibly well. Like I think Joe and Dom are probably the best product people I've ever met, like Web 2 or Web 3. They're just so incredible. They had such a detailed plan before Creepz had minted of like, here's what we're going to do. And, it's not that plan is exactly what we built. Like it changed a lot over time. But, when we saw that, it's very easy then to say like, okay, we could do it this way with these, with this contract design in this way. Like I think we went through 2 or 3 iterations of like very, very different kind of differently designed or architected contracts. Like I remember one which was actually really interesting, which was like there was like a sub layer to the currency. I can't remember exactly how it works, but it was I remember being very excited at the time of how that works. So we tried out a few different things given that information. But of course, like you said, like season 2 comes and we don't really know what we need from season 1, and that's just kind of that's more of a, I guess, a feeling. Like you just have to go with kind of what you think is going to be needed, and where you can leave data public so that other contracts could read it. Most things on contracts, most variables on contracts should be public. Like there's very few cases where something needs to be private, because by making it public, you're allowing future either yourself or other projects to use your contract in more interesting ways. So yeah, it was a function of we knew some stuff, we work with that stuff, and we knew that other stuff is coming, but we don't know what that stuff is, and so we kind of have to use our intuition to make sure that we think things will be available that need to be available.
Gotcha. And then so you did kind of that first mint with them, kind of looking at the whole ecosystem. Did you continue to work with Creepz? You mentioned that you're not really that involved now with them, but
no, yeah. So after, I think I don't know what timeline it was, but so I worked with them pretty much all through season 1 and season 2. I kind of forget where season 2 started. I forget where season 2 started, but pretty much until the end of season 2, and like working with them on the interdimensionals to make sure that which aren't finished yet. Like, I mean, the code is finished, but obviously it's not launched yet. I think they're waiting for a better time to launch it. But the interdimensionals was the last thing I worked on. And yeah, because now I think their vision is much bigger, right? So they've hired out a team, and they have a lot of interesting stuff going on. Whereas I was always part-time. Like it was not a full-time thing for me. And so for me, it was more like, how can I focus on these more community-based projects, like now, like across multiple projects rather than just on single ones.
Yeah. And how exciting was that for you to see what Creepz did, like coming out of the mint, and like they started to fly like within like it was like, especially when Lumi and everything came out, it was like craziness at that time.
I mean, there's 2 parts of it. One was just like, oh my god, this is incredible. Like I just accidentally strapped myself to the next Google type thing. But the other side is like, it's hard to tell with NFTs. Like they're so new, and again, like I said, with speculation, like the same side of circulation that I don't like, which is just like it's rampant, also inhibits me from enjoying too much when things go up and down, or I guess being too sad when things go down, but also being too happy when things go up. Like it's that natural curb for me. The more interesting thing was like because of how well the first few launches that have gone, it was like, oh, great. Like the next launch, people are the thing that I crave most in life is just like somebody uses the thing I build, right? Like that's my like my kryptonite, I guess, or whatever the positive version of that is like, I my dream since I was in uni has always been like I'm on the train and somebody's using an app that I made like next to me. I used to build apps back in the day, so someone's using an app next to me on the train. Like that was I don't know, not my friend or something. And so with Creepz, that was the beautiful part, right? Like the first few mints went well, and it was like when we build the next couple of contracts and services, we know people are going to come and use this like en masse, and that feeling is just incredible. Like this is such a powerful motivator of people are going to come, they're going to enjoy it, and like especially the ones where it's not necessarily financially driven. Like there's a few things that were more like financially motivated, like not Creepz particularly, but for the community, like Lumi Vaults and the whole Lumi ecosystem in general. Whereas like when we introduced the games and the renaming and the kind of the leaderboards and you can burn the thing to get those prizes, like those are the things that interest me, because like people are going to come and do this, and it's just so nice like seeing people doing it. Like that feeling is just incredible.
Yeah, I was just so gutted because I was whitelisted for Creep, and then I went out with some friends that night, and then one of my other friends called me. He's like I was in underground parking, so I had really bad reception as well. He's like, hey, Creepz is gonna sell out. I'm like, okay, let me try to get one, or because you could get 7 at the time, which was like kind of a crazy number. And then it's like, I missed it, and I was like, oh, and at that point I was like trying not to buy too much stuff off secondary, so I'm like, no, I'm just gonna leave it. And then like a few weeks later, me and my friend went to dinner. He's like, he had already calculated this whole spreadsheet of how much Lumi he was earning. It was like basically like a retirement plan at that point. But I guess that's when you knew it was like too good to be true. Because I think I think they were at 10 ETH or something like that, plus all the Lumi you were earning, and it was pretty insane. But yeah, I think I know you mentioned it to me when we met. Like that was in a way you're just like excited to get involved. That was like your foot in the door. And so I think I remember you saying like you didn't take payment for your work on Creepz. It was just I don't know, free NFTs or something.
Yeah, I mean, when we started, it was just I did get paid later just for like this as a thank you kind of thing. But it was very much just like, this is an interesting project. I just want to like you just want to go and stand with the cool people, like, and if they as long as they accept you into the circle, it's like, yes, I'm winning. And it was like one of those situations. I just want to be involved with a project that was doing well in some way, and go and kind of engage with them. And like I knew what my skills were because I've been building like in tech for so long. And so like when there was I remember one time I was at a dinner. One of the launches was at some point where I was at dinner with some friends I hadn't seen for ages, and like the launch, something happened during the launch that it kind of looked like something weird was going on, and we still did. I think the likely answer was because of this thing called uncle blocks in ETH. So every now and then like somebody will mine a block, but then that one doesn't get taken into the chain, like another one happens. And so the backend was written in such a way, it was for the shapeshifters, that if the mining happened, then our database wouldn't catch up with where it should be. It wouldn't undo the bad action. And I was at dinner, and like the mint started, and then Vic and Joe phoned, and they're like, oh my God, something terrible is happening. And in a weird way, that feeling is annoying, because it's like, oh crap, something bad is happening. But the positive, like someone's using the thing I built, and like it's going badly, and somebody actually cares that it's going badly. That feeling is just incredible. And so really, that's what I was chasing. The kind of and that's what I'll continue chasing. That's my favorite. That's my favorite thing to do, is just build awesome stuff and then have people use it, and have people like when it goes badly and someone cares. Like with $1 Million Token Page, when we found this bug and we solved it, it wasn't because $1 Million Token Page hasn't really taken off yet. Like it's still around, so we still have add to it. But when we found that bug, it's not like, oh my God, the world has come down. Like it was more like, oh crap, we need to fix this quickly before someone realizes. But if somebody cared, they would have found it. And so it's the opposite of that feeling, right? Where like in Creepz, if there was a bug, somebody would find it and somebody would exploit it, and it's just such a cool feeling. Like it's a strong motivator.
Yeah, I mean, I think in that case, if you're saying it was a function that only the owner was supposed to do, but anybody could do it, like that would be like they could have minted out your whole project or something for free.
Yeah, they could have minted it out for free. Yeah. So like two things. One is, I don't know if anyone would want to do that, and two is no one was looking for it, right? And so like, if in like a year's time, we do well. Like we have some big plans for like what Million on a Token Page represents for us if Token Page as a company does well. So if that goes well, then of course somebody will go back and like mint one of those V1 ones just in case. But yeah, luckily we fixed it by now.
Yeah. And so I guess what would you say like are like top 3 tips for engineers or developers trying to get into Web3 at this point?
Yeah, the first thing is like it's not different. Like just start. Like it's what I think the biggest challenge people have is like, should I be in Web3? So the biggest challenge I see with my colleagues or old colleagues or my old employees like is that they're not considering Web3 as a path. Like they don't, first of all, they don't know what it is, they're skeptical, or they're scared that it's not for them, right? And so the first tip is just like try it, like build some stuff on the side, use a Ethereum node, just use a public Alchemy or something, and try and get some data on some community and build some small tool. Like, if you, for Spriteclub, there was a guy that was in the community and said, hey, I'm looking to build Web3. I'm a Web2 developer with some sort. And I said, cool, just build a thing where you can see who's owned your Sprite before you, right? Like which community members have owned your Sprite before you. Great, that's easy, and the data is public, and it's so, it's not trivial, but it's straightforward. And so just go and build some interesting stuff. The second thing is like learning Solidity is I think just awesome. Like you're going to learn the language, it's going to be easy, and then like you'll write some stuff, you'll deploy it, and then you'll realize that actually gas matters, security matters, or security in the sense of like it's like mental security, like knowing that everything you've done is correct before you deploy it, like this peace of mind type security, and most importantly, like thinking in terms of like money, like thinking in terms of like everything that happens here is a trade of money. It's difficult to adjust. And then the third one, this is like more of a biased one, I guess, but like to me, the community part is the most important thing that's happening at the moment. Like the fact that Web3, and we see it in Web2 as well, like this whole like, Kim Kardashian being a private equity person and Mr. Beast releasing burgers and they're selling out, like this whole community thing of like, people, we don't really like companies so much anymore. We like people and projects and like more into like, communities. I keep saying that word, but like communities. So just being part of it, like try not to be the whole, when moon and what's the floor price today kind of guy. Try and be like actually interested in the product and what the community is looking for. And I'm sure you will find so many problems to solve. Like there's just so many interesting things to build in these communities. Whether they're worth it or not, I'm not sure, but there's just loads of them. And so the more you can participate in not just NFT communities, I think any community, the more interesting things you're going to see. Because there's just so many.
And then maybe we'll finish off on maybe talking a bit about Token Page. So that's your company now. Yeah, tell me a bit about what you guys are up to at Token Page.
Yeah, for sure. So for the first thing is we do like consulting for NFT projects. So similar to how we did with Creepz and Spriteclub and the other smaller ones, like we didn't have a company or anything. We're just doing them kind of either for fun or for a small percentage of the mint or something. And now it's like a more formal thing. Like we know exactly what we're doing. Like we can guide you through it and help you build your thing. And but the second part that's more interesting for us is, well, of course, some of those projects are interesting, but for us, like the more interesting is building our own products. So we built galleries. So we now have a gallery that you can like deploy for any NFT project where people can like come in and interact with each other and interact with their token. And we're trying to find more interesting features for that. It's not really at product market fit level yet, but finding more ways to keep communities engaged so that they have these NFT projects have a place online and the community has a place to go and kind of interact with each other and the project that isn't Discord and isn't OpenSea, because I'm a big fan of not using OpenSea as much. Like OpenSea is not, they're taking a fee from all these NFT projects for almost nothing, right? Like these marketplaces are a commodity product. Like discovery is the only interesting thing I see there, but most people aren't discovering on OpenSea. They're just buying and selling, right? They already know. Like I already know I want a Honest One or a Bored Ape or a Sprite or a Creep or whatever. Like OpenSea getting a fee for that doesn't really seem that sensible. I'm very sure most NFT projects will go to zero, but I'm very sure the ones that survive will have their own marketplaces. And so that part of that is what we believe in that gallery, like not just marketplace, but a place that you can call your own. And so we will incorporate a marketplace eventually, but that's not really the interesting part for us. It's more about, being able to see your other community members and interact with them and your tokens and interact with them.
Because right now the gallery, you showed me some features around that, which is like yeah, I guess if you're the token owner, it allows you to write lore, like write a storyline
Exactly.
about that particular character as one of the things that you guys have started with.
Exactly. That was for Sprite Club, because Sprite Club kind of see themselves as very I early on someone mentioned like D&D for Web3, and so like great, that stuck in my mind a lot. And so that was a very easy thing for us to build, because it's like, if you own your sprites, like the sense in Sprite Club is supposed to be you don't own this thing, you are this thing. And so, if that's you, then write a story, tell us your name, tell us your personality, and so on. And so it doesn't live on the blockchain. We could add that, but it lives somewhere, right? And your community can see it. And I don't really know what the Sprite Club's longer term plans are, but if they were to like think about releasing a TV show or a movie or a comic book or something, like now the community is working together to create value, right? Like they're all creating this story together, and they're all creating like real life something that could be turned into real life value together, which I think is the end outcome, right? Projects that are surviving just on royalties, that's not really anything long term. You need to be creating something out of the project, like Creepz. This is why I think Creepz are going to fly. Like I'm trying to sell everything I have to try and just get into more Creepz, because their TV show, their fashion, like these are things that go out into the real world and actually affect lives. Like they're going to bring more people into. I said recently, like I think Creepz are going to bring more people into Web2 than so far what I can see from Moonbirds and eight Bored Apes. Like not to throw shade on others, but like if Creepz released a TV show and it went on Netflix the way I watched this show recently, The Inside Job, a TV show, like a cartoon TV show about some hilarious thing on Netflix. If that was a Creepz version, like I could picture it entirely, and that will bring so many people into Web2. And so really with Gallery, what we're trying to do is build more of this. How can we get the community, any community, they've all invested together into this NFT, get them together and start creating interesting things that could then be leveraged into something that creates value for the company, project, community, whatever it is.
Gotcha. And Krish, how many Creepz are you holding at the moment then?
I have 3. My wife has 1, and I have 1 mega and a few armories and other stuff. But those are so not crazy amounts. I don't buy and sell much. I'm too risk averse in terms of, or too not buying and selling. But not crazy amount. But everything else I need to sell and buy 1 more Creep now.
You're like a true, like you have that true like genuine engineering spirit of just wanting to build stuff and have people use it, which is which is really awesome. I did cut you off there on Token Page, so we talked about galleries. And then I know you're building some other kind of almost like a community page where you can kind of see everybody else in the community or their I don't know, the Twitter followings and stuff like that.
Exactly, we built that into Gallery, so it's a way for the Gallery members to see each other, and it's a common thing on Twitter of like follow each other, but if you don't see it, it's not easy, and like Twitter and Discord are both very timely. Like you have to be there. What we're trying to create is more of not a wiki or not a Facebook, but I don't know, some other word there of like something that you don't need to go and look at it every day. Like if you go and look at it once a month or once a week, it's going to have almost the same amount. Well, if you go and look at it once a month, it'll have more value than if you go and look at it once a week, right? Because like the information would have collected and there'll be more interesting things there. And so that for us, that represented for in the gallery as like a members page where you can connect your Twitter, and then everyone that comes, like it's Sprite Club, everyone that comes just follows everyone else, right? And so it's a much easier way to like get these follows happening. But you can also like engage with these people. Like now you can go on Twitter and tweet at them. Like you're creating more interest within the community, I believe. Or from the little we've seen so far, I think it's pointing in that direction, which is quite exciting. It is a bit tough because obviously bear market, not everyone's feeling very positive, and so especially the positive ones. But then we were building a bunch of small other things as well. So we just built a little app called GM that we'll be launching in the next week or so. So we'll see how people respond to that. Like we're kind of just poking in many different directions to see what the communities are interested, like the people that are left. So there's not everyone left, right? But the people that are left, like what are you waiting for? Like hopefully if it's just prices going up, then unfortunately we can't. I'm not really too concerned with how to make that happen. That's not really my interest area. But if you're waiting for something interesting to be created or something new to happen or to try something new, these are the areas I really want to poke and try interesting stuff. Me and Arthur, my co-founder, like these are the areas that Token Page are really kind of like trying to get into.
Gotcha. Awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Krish. I think that was really insightful and really good tips for people that are interested in, like developers specifically, I guess, trying to get into Web3 and your journey and experience. So really appreciate that.
Awesome, yeah. And if anyone has any questions or thoughts or anything, just feel free to reach out. There's probably somewhere written down.
Yeah. So I'll share all your details and stuff in
Awesome.
when I put this up. So great.
Very cool. Thank you.